You've probably heard this idea floating around, right? That psychedelic therapy has some kind of magic ingredient. Well, today we're going to roll up our sleeves and really dig into the science to find out if that's the whole story.
So let's get right to the big question. Can a profound mystical trip actually heal something like depression or anxiety? A lot of people really believe it can, and you can see why. It's a super powerful idea. But we're here to follow the evidence, to see what the research really shows. Okay, first things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page. When we talk about a mystical trip, we're not just talking about seeing pretty colors. We're talking about a very specific state of consciousness, It's defined by these core feelings, a sense of oneness with everything, a feeling of sacredness, completely losing your sense of time and space, and this deep, overwhelmingly positive mood. And that brings us to what researchers call the mystical experience hypothesis. Basically, it's the main theory out there. It suggests that this specific, profound state of mind, that's the key. That's the primary active ingredient that makes all the healing happen. And listen, this is not some fringe idea. As you can see from this quote, this has been a central focus in the research for decades. The prevailing wisdom has been that the path to healing is paved by this profound, mystical experience.
So the idea is really clear, and it's definitely compelling. But is it true? Is the mystical experience really the secret sauce? Let's take a look at what the actual data has to say. To get to the bottom of this, we're turning to a huge, comprehensive review from 2023. And this wasn't just one experiment. This paper pulled together the results from 44 different studies to get the clearest possible picture. And at first glance, the numbers look pretty convincing. The review looked at 75 different connections between mystical experiences and mental health. And out of those, a whopping 57 showed a significant positive link. I mean, that's a huge majority. So you'd think, okay, the hypothesis holds up. The more mystical the experience, the better the mental health outcome. Case closed, right? Well, not quite. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. Because when the researchers started to dig deeper into the details of those 44 studies, a much more complicated and way more nuanced picture started to show up. So check this out. For anxiety, the link looks pretty solid, right? 6 studies found a positive link, only 1 didn't. But then you look at depression, and it's practically a 50-50 split. 8 studies found a link, sure, but 5 found no significant connection at all. That's a huge wrinkle.
And it gets even more detailed. The type of study really mattered. The cross-sectional studies, the ones that rely on people remembering their trip months or years later, they always found a strong link. But the more rigorous studies, the prospective ones that track people from before to after, well, they found a much weaker connection, especially for depression. Memory, it turns out, can be a tricky thing. And the plot thickens even more. The review also found that this connection was stronger in healthy volunteers than it was in actual clinical patients. And it was better at predicting improvements in general stuff, like well-being and life satisfaction, than it was for a specific diagnosis like major depression. So all of this complexity really points to a new question. What if we've been so focused on the mystical experience that we've kind of missed other really important parts of the puzzle? I mean, could there be other active ingredients at play here? The research is starting to suggest that we absolutely need to broaden our search and look at other parts of the whole psychedelic journey.
So that big 2023 review pointed to 2 other major contenders. The first is what's called psychological insight. Those sudden aha moments where you understand something new about yourself. And the second is emotional breakthrough, which is all about processing and releasing these deeply held emotions, a kind of catharsis. And when a few of the studies actually put these things head to head, the results were pretty striking. They found that those personal psychological insights, finally understanding a personal problem in a totally new way, were sometimes a stronger predictor of recovery than the mystical feelings were. And it was a similar story for emotional breakthroughs. In the studies that looked specifically at people with depression, the ability to finally process and release these powerful, bottled-up emotions was actually a better predictor of improvement than the mystical experience itself was. So, what does this all mean when you put it together? Well, the big takeaway is that the mystical experience isn't the whole story. It's an important piece, for sure, but it seems to be just one piece of a much bigger,
much more fascinating puzzle. The author of that big review, Kangaslampi, sums it up perfectly. He basically concludes that these other things, the insights and the emotional breakthroughs, might be at least as important, and that maybe we've been focusing a little too narrowly on just one part of the picture. So here's the bottom line. Yes, mystical experiences are definitely linked to good outcomes, but they aren't the only thing going on. Those personal aha moments of insight and the deep catharsis of an emotional breakthrough are also incredibly powerful, critical drivers of healing. The reality, as it turns out, is way more interesting and nuanced than the simple idea of a single magic ingredient. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question for the future of this whole field, doesn't it? If the answer isn't just have a mystical experience, then what is the true key? What combination of insights, breakthroughs, and these altered states is really going to unlock the full potential of this therapy?